Okay, continuing with traits. And again, you would think the dominant trait would be the one that you see the most out as far as the phenotype, but it's not the case. I mean, I guess it's just variations, but it's more common not to have extra fingers and toes, even though that's the dominant trait. So just because it's a dominant trait does not mean that that's the one you're going to see the most in populations. Okay, the recessive trait is just to have a normal amount of fingers. The dominant trait is to have extra, but yet you don't see that many people with extra fingers and toes. Okay. A lot of times with genes, though, it's not just like with the color purple or white or red or white or whatever. There's more forms. And again, the most common, and I've talked about this one already, is blood type. Blood type, we have A, we have B, and we have O. So you can use combinations of those. You can be type A, type B, type AB, or type O. All right. And it's an enzyme, again, attaches. And the way they do this is the I is like blood type, and then they put A, B, and then they put a little I here. Because the reason for that is if you're type O, think of O as 0. These are special like carbohydrate things, protein things on the red blood cells. Okay. If you have the A, you are type A. If you have the B receptor, you're type B. If you have both of them on your red blood cells, so you have the A carbohydrate and the B, you're type AB. And in order to be O, you can't have any of them. So that's why they make it little I. Okay. So there's an enzyme, again, a protein that encodes for it and adds this A carbohydrate and gives you, or the B carbohydrate. And again, if you have them on your red blood cells, if you have the A, you are A. If you have the B, you are B. If you have both of them, you're AB. And if you don't have any of them, you're O. So think of O as like 0. Okay. You don't have that enzyme that codes for that carbohydrate on your blood cells. Okay. So again, here it is. They have, if you have the A, you have it on your red blood cells, the B, you have it. And if you're O, you don't have one on there. Okay. And so the genotype, if you get 2 A's or an A and an O, you're going to be type A. It isn't like you have super A and because you got an A and an O, you're just A. Okay. And here we have little spiky things. That's A. Okay. If you're the B, and again, you can get 2 B's, you can be dominant, or you can get a B and an O, and you're still B. It doesn't matter. Once you get one of these, you're that type. So you have the round ones. If you get one, like mom gives you A and dad gives you B, then you're type AB. And you get both the spikies and the round ones. Okay. And these again are on your red blood cells. And in order to be O, you have to be no spiky things, no round things, nothing on there. And you can see they write it that way. Now, if you look at this, you would think that O would be the rare form because you have to have the 2 recessives. It's not. O is the most common. Okay. A is next, and then B, and then AB. Okay. But O is the most common blood type, which is great because it is the best blood type because you can give this blood to any of these types because there's nothing in there to interfere. Okay. All right. So when you have these multiple phenotypic effects, it's called pleiotropism. Okay. I'm not going to ask you that word again, but just remember that you have multiple things that can cause different characteristics. And again, the more complicated an organism, the more you see this. Okay, there's some hereditary diseases in people that are caused by these having the multiple effects. One of them is cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a lung and digestive disorder. It's basically you have issues with breaking down your fluids. You get this really thick, gunky stuff. If you know anybody with cystic fibrosis, they have a lot of issues with their lungs. They have to beat on their lungs to clear out the mucus, and they have to take enzymes to help digest their food. There's also one called sickle cell disease, and I'll show you that one. Sickle cell is something that occurs in a lot of Black people, and it's actually a way their body's kind of adjusted to malaria. Okay? All right, so some traits can be determined by 2 or more genes. All right, it's not just one. And now we talked about blood type, it was, A, B, and O. Now, when I say 2 or more genes, maybe we have, 2 characteristics that determine, like I said, tallness. There might be 4 characteristics that determine you tall. Maybe you get 3 tall and 1 short so that you're in between somewhere, something like that. Okay. So if epistasis means there's a gene, it's at a certain spot and it gets altered. Okay. And so it alters the expression of another gene. So it basically interferes with another gene. Okay, and that can happen. This happens. Labrador retrievers, you have many colors. And there's actually 2 genes that determine their coat color. All right. So it's not just one gene with 3 colors, it's 2 different genes that determine their coat color. Okay. One gene determines the pigment color. There's allows for brown and black. And then there's another one that determines the actual color that's deposited in their hair. How's that for weird, right? And they have E for color and E for no color. Little e and big E, okay? So again, when we're talking about these, there's 2 different genes that determine their color. Not 2 different alleles, but there's actually 2 different, totally different genes that determine their color, okay? And if you see here, here's mom and dad, and they're both black, and see they got the big B, which is a dominant. If they got the 2 little B's, they'd be brown. And then they got brown, the color deposited as well. Okay, so these guys, if you get a big B, you're going to be black. A big B and a big E, you're going to be black. All right, see the brown ones got the little B's. All right, but what about these yellow ones? Okay, what happens is it really doesn't matter if they're black or brown. What happens is they don't get the color deposited. So yellow labs are basically recessive forms where it didn't matter if they were supposed to be black or if they were supposed to be brown. They're yellow because the color didn't get deposited in the pigment didn't get deposited in their hair. So that's why you get blacks, browns, and yellows. And again, the blacks have the big B, the browns have 2 little b's. That's a recessive. They have to have a big E. That means that whatever color they're supposed to be that pigment gets deposited in their hair. So you can see this guy's got 2 little browns, but he's got a big E. That means, yep, the color got deposited. All the ones that are black or brown have a big E. And all these guys down here that don't have any color, again, it doesn't matter if they were supposed to be black or brown. Because the pigment didn't get deposited in their hair, they're yellow. So you've got those characteristics for your dogs. And actually, you can see it's easier to get a yellow than it is to get a brown. Okay, of course, black would be the most dominant. All right, and again, this would be a dihybrid cross. It's just taking big B, taking these 2 together and these 2 together, and these 2 together, and these, you just separate out usually you put, the male here and the female here, and then you just put the possible combinations and then just fill them in. Okay, so quantitative means a number. These are characteristics that vary in a population. Okay, a quantitative variation usually indicates what they call a polygenic inheritance. It means there's some sort of additive effect to one or more genes. Okay, skin color. Okay, if skin color was just determined by one, we'd either have one or the other. But we have such a variance. Think of all the different variances we can have skin color. Even in your family, you can have some people that have more melanin that are darker, and so on. It goes on the line. So you get this variance according to how many genes they got. And again, they get a variance according to additive effects or adding more onto the skin color. Okay. Another one, and again, these are all departing from what Mendeleev said, because Mendeleev said, you either dominant or recessive. Well, he didn't know about all these other things, all these other characteristics, like, God, there's 2 genes that determine your skin color, or 5 genes, and when they're additive, so you get different phenotypes and genotypes. And again, like with the lab, where you can end up with 3 different things. Okay, there's actually the one that got all the recessive can be, what do they call them? There's a name for that, where they can even be white. Okay, but sometimes you get phenotypes and the environment changes it. Not so much with people, but like with plants and stuff. What if there's different minerals in the soils? They can change the colors. So you got all these characteristics. These phenotypic range can change because a poly meaning many characteristics. Okay, so traits that depend on multiple genes, and again, when I say multiple genes, I mean more than one gene that determines things. They also can get environmental influences. Like I said, with a plant, you can get variances in colors of the flowers by the minerals that are in the soil. Okay, well, here's an example. These 2 have the same genotype, but because of where they're at, what they absorb through the soils and stuff, they get totally different colors. Okay, so you can get a variance. Poor Mendel, if he'd probably known all this stuff, guy probably would have gone crazy. It's like everything he did was awesome, but it has changed, and he wouldn't understand that because, again, he didn't have any idea about the biochemical stuff, the DNA, the genes, all that. That wasn't there for him. But what he did was really impressive. Okay, so the phenotype, again, what it looks like includes physical appearance, and then it includes internal anatomy and physiology and behavior. So you get all kinds of things that roll into that, okay? An organism's phenotype reflects its overall genotype, all right? So your phenotype is supposed to be based on your genotype, but it can change when you have different environmental histories. You can make your skin darker by being exposed to the sun a lot, okay? Bring that melanin out, all right? So things like that can happen. Things to remember about when you're doing research: humans are not, they're a horrible subject to do genetic research on, okay? You think about it, the generation time is pretty long. I mean, 9 months to have a child, and then that child, you have to wait for that child to grow up if you want to check what kind of, offspring they'll have. And again, parents produce, most of the time when they do genetic research, what they're looking at is what's already out there. I mean, you don't cross two people and say, hey, you have that trait and you have that trait. I think you need, to have a baby so we can check out what happens. And then what happens with that baby? You just don't do that. So it's really hard to do like I said, breeding experiments are not acceptable. You don't have a child just to check out what its genetics are going to be, because who's going to take care of that child? You know what I'm saying? So humans, when they do research with humans, it has to be what's already out there. And you're not going to get the numbers like, Mendeleev have, because when you're done with the pea plants, what do? You eat the peas and you throw away the plants, right? So it's much easier to deal with it like that. Okay. But it is the foundation. His basic genetics is the foundation. And that we still have a lot of traits that are based on, one or the other, not multiple. We do have variances, but we also do have some characteristics that are just based on one or the other. Okay. You can do what they call a pedigree. It's your family tree. And you can look at, they do this a lot of times if there's a genetic disorder that's in the tree, you can trace back. One of the most common is if you look Russian, where they had the hemophilia, the last of the Romanovs, their son had hemophilia, and they were looking at the pedigrees to see where it came from, that kind of stuff. But there are patterns in your pedigree, okay? You don't hear about pedigree so much with people. You hear more about it like with dogs and horses and stuff like that. But again, same deal, checking out their pedigree, where they came from. Okay, here's some characteristics. Widow's peak, if you don't know what that is, where you've got that V in your forehead that comes down. Some people, like Dracula, it doesn't have to be where it comes way down here, but you can see that it's not straight across like this is, okay? And widow's peak is a dominant trait. Oh, I have it right here. If you look here, this person is like, what do they have? Affected are blue. Well, big W, and the ones that don't are unaffected, have little w. So it's a dominant trait. And so you get the characteristics. Here's two sisters. One has it, one doesn't. The only way she doesn't have it is if she has the two recessive traits. But she could either be dominant, homozygous, or heterozygous, and she'd still have the trait. Here's another one with earlobes. I don't know. You can check this out if you have an attached earlobe. In other words, you don't have this little globby thing on the end. I have free earlobes, but you can check. Maybe yours comes straight down. Okay. And again, attached is actually, let's look. Attached must be a recessive trait. Okay. Because there are two small ones. And the dominant trait, which is free earlobes, would be either homozygous dominant or heterozygous. Again, those are simple ones you can check out, to see if you have those traits. It doesn't really matter if you have widow's peak or if you have free earlobes. It's just, one of those things you can check, dominant and recessive traits. And you know what? I think I better quit here. And next time we'll talk about more about pedigrees. And again, pedigrees are used to check what could happen in the future for you. And we'll talk more about that. That's where we'll start next time.